We all know the drill. Lights are out, recorders on, yelling into the dark, is anybody here with us? For most, ghost hunting is a thrill. It's a rush of adrenaline, a few jump scares, and maybe if you're lucky, you might get a spooky photo. But what happens when the danger isn't a demon or a shadow person? What happens when the scariest thing in the dark is a moving train or yourself? The paranormal community loves to talk about the dangers of possession, but today we're talking about the dangers of reality. In this video, we're looking at 3 cases where the paranormal investigation turned into a nightmare. This is when ghost hunting goes wrong. Let's get spooky. Hey, spooky people, it's your best friend Kenny here with 3 spooky and disturbing stories. It was 2:30 a.m., humid and pitch black. Train number 9 was already having a bad night. It had pulled into the Statesville depot 34 minutes behind schedule, and the engineer, William Uncle Billy West, was anxious to make up time on the way to Asheville. The train was moving at roughly 35 miles per hour. As the train crossed the bridge, passengers reported feeling a sudden violent jolt, and they were about to find out the tracks themselves had given way. In a split second, the train derailed. It didn't just flip over. It launched off the side of the bridge, plummeting 60 feet into the darkness below. The train slammed into the far bank and buried itself in the mud. The passenger cars crashed into the creek bed, crashing on top of one another. The fall was bad, and the aftermath was worse. The wreckage landed directly in Third Creek, effectively damming the creek. The water began to rise rapidly behind the wall of twisted metal and wood. Survivors were trapped inside the crushed cars. They were injured, and they were drowning. One of the most harrowing accounts involved a girl named Lou Alley. Her mother, Sue Poole, was pinned in the wreckage as the water rose. Lou Alley held her mother's head above the water for as long as she physically could, but eventually her strength gave out and she was forced to let her mother go, watching her drown in the dark. There were 23 confirmed dead, including the engineer, and approximately 30 seriously injured. It was one of the deadliest rail disasters in North Carolina history. Almost immediately, the blame game started. The railroad claimed sabotage. Investigators found that spikes and bolts had been removed from the rail, suggesting that someone had deliberately loosened the track to cause the wreck. However, many locals and survivors argued it was negligence. Witnesses claimed the cross ties were rotten and that the bridge maintenance had been ignored. They argued the sabotage angle was just the railroad trying to avoid liability and paying out for the massive lawsuits. A jury eventually ruled that the wreck was caused by persons unknown removing the spikes. The trauma of this event caused the legend of the phantom train to spread to locals. Locals claim that on the anniversary, August 27th, you could hear the scream of the whistle and the crash of the metal. And this legend is exactly what drew Christopher Kaiser and his friends to the bridge in 2010. This would lead to a second tragedy on the Bostian Bridge. In the early hours of August 27th, 2010, a group of paranormal enthusiasts accessed the tracks, supposedly entering from a nearby landscaping business's property to avoid detection. They walked out onto the 300-foot-long, 60-foot-high brick and stone bridge. It was pitch black. Suddenly, a train began approaching, but it was different than what would be a typical train in this area. The train that approached was not a standard heavy freight train. It consisted of 3 locomotives coupled together with no freight cars attached. Without the rattle and drag of heavy cars, a train like this is significantly quieter than a loaded one. It can also accelerate and move much faster. Survivors and investigators speculate that when the group first saw the lights or heard the hum, they may have hesitated, believing they were witnessing the very paranormal phenomena they had come to see. By the time they had realized it was an actual train, it was closing the distance at nearly 40 miles an hour. As the train rounded the bend leading to the bridge, the group panicked. The narrow trestle offered no safety bays or walkways. The only escape was to outrun the train to the end of the bridge or jump. Most of the group managed to sprint to the end of the trestle just in time. However, Christopher Kaiser and a female companion were caught on the tracks. According to witness statements and police reports, Kaiser grabbed the woman and shoved her off the tracks off the side of the bridge. The action saved her life. She fell approximately 30 to 40 feet down the embankment and survived with injuries. But Kaiser was unable to clear the tracks in time. He was struck by the lead locomotive and killed instantly. The female survivor was airlifted to Carolina's Medical Center in Charlotte. Another man sustained injuries from jumping, but survived. The Iredell County Sheriff's Office ruled the death accidental. While the group was trespassing, authorities focused on the tragedy of the event rather than pursuing criminal charges against the survivors. It's important to remember that a freight train, even a light freight train, takes over a mile to stop once the emergency brakes are applied. The engineer reportedly saw the people and applied the brakes, but the physics of the train stopping in time was impossible. Authorities and local paranormal groups issued strong warnings that modern trains do not run on set schedules and can appear at any time, regardless of the hour or the date. This tragedy highlights the extreme danger of paranormal investigations in active industrial zones. Kaiser is remembered in the community as a hero who spent his final seconds ensuring the survivor of another. If you're into the paranormal, the Villisca Axe Murder House is your Toys R Us. In 1912, 8 people were bludgeoned to death in their beds, and the crime was never solved. The house has since been frozen in time. No electricity, no running water, a creepy wooden box filled with toys and furniture from the early 1900s. On the evening of June 9th, the Presbyterian Church was hosting its annual Children's Day program. Josiah Moore and his wife Sarah were there with their 4 kids, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul. They were a well-liked family. Josiah was a successful businessman who sold farm implements. After the service, 2 neighborhood girls, Lena and Ina Stillinger, asked to sleep over at the Moore house. The family agreed. They all walked home under the streetlights, arriving home at around 9:30 p.m. They ate cookies, drank some milk, and went to bed. And this was the last time anyone saw them alive. The next morning, their neighbor, Mary Peckham, noticed something was wrong. The Moore house was dead silent. The chickens hadn't been fed. The curtains were drawn. She called Josiah's brother, Ross Moore. He arrived, knocked, and shouted, but got no answer. He used his key to open the door and walked into the guest bedroom downstairs. He came out seconds later, shouting for Mary to call the sheriff. In the downstairs bedroom, he had found the bodies of Lena and Ina Stillinger. When the marshal arrived, he found a scene that defied logic. Josiah's own axe was found leaning against the wall in the guest room. It was covered in blood and hair. All 8 victims had been bludgeoned to death in their sleep. The killer had used the blunt side of the axe on everyone except Josiah, who was struck with the sharp blade. This is where it gets strange. Every mirror in the house was covered with blankets or skirts. In the parents' room, the axe swing was so violent it left gouge marks in the ceiling above the bed. A plate of food and a bowl of bloody water were found on the kitchen table. Near the axe, a 4-pound slab of bacon was found wrapped in a towel. The killer left no fingerprints, or maybe it was just that in 1912 Iowa, fingerprint science wasn't very good. So the case turned into a circus of rumors. One suspect was Frank Jones, the local boss. Jones was an Iowa state senator and fierce business rival of Josiah Moore. Rumor had it that he was stealing Jones's business and had allegedly had an affair with Jones's daughter-in-law. The theory was that Jones hired a hitman to teach Moore a lesson that got out of hand, but there was no evidence linked to him. Another suspect was Lynn George Jacqueline Kelly. Kelly was an odd guy. He was a traveling minister who was at the Children's Day service that night. He left the town early the next morning on a train, telling people he had heard about the murders before the bodies were discovered. He later confessed to the crimes, claiming God told him to slay the utterly wicked. He would recant that confession, claiming police torture. He was tried twice, the first ending in a hung jury, the second in acquittal. Most historians think he was mentally ill and obsessed with the crime, but probably not the killer. Another suspect was William Blackie Mansfield. Modern investigators like this guy. He was suspected of killing his wife, child, and in-laws with an axe in Blue Island, Illinois 2 years later. And the MO was nearly identical. Axe, covered mirrors, killed in sleep. But a payroll record gave him an alibi for the night of the Villisca murders. He was released. That payroll record would later find out to be forged. The Villisca Axe murders remains the Jack the Ripper case of the Midwest. The killer walked into a house, slaughtered 8 people without waking the neighbors, locked the door behind him, and vanished into the Iowa cornfields. The Villisca Axe Murder House turned into a pay-to-stay deal. You could rent the house for the night, bring your sleeping bag, and see if you could handle the spooky vibes. On the night of November 7th, 2014, 37-year-old Robert Stephen Lorson Jr. arrived from Rhinelander, Wisconsin. He was a paying customer there for a recreational paranormal investigation with his family. The timing here has some horror movie vibes to it. The original 1912 murders were estimated to have started around midnight. At approximately 12:45 a.m., Larson was alone in the downstairs bedroom, the room where the 2 Stillinger sisters were found murdered. While the rest of his group was elsewhere, Larson reportedly cried out for help. When his companions rushed into the room, they found him with a stab wound to the chest, a serious puncture wound, allegedly inflicted with a hunting knife. But there was no intruder. and the house was locked up tight. Nobody could have done this except for Larson to himself. The scene went from a spooky, fun place to an active crime scene quickly. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office was called. Larson was rushed to a nearby hospital in Clarinda, Iowa. But the injury was bad enough that he had to be helicoptered to Creighton University Medical Center in Omaha, Nebraska. The longtime caretaker of the house, whose name is Johnny Hauser, came to the scene and found a teddy bear covered in blood on the floor. Larson survived. He recovered from his injuries, but for a while his condition was critical. The police investigation was short. Sheriff Joe Sampson confirmed there was no signs of foul play. No axe-wielding maniac had broken in. Larson had done this to himself. So no criminal charges were filed. It was ruled a medical or mental health episode. And of course, the internet and the paranormal community went wild. Since Larson had stayed largely out of the public since the event, speculation has run amok. One theory is the possession theory, which ghost hunters love. The narrative goes that Larson was overtaken by a dark entity in the house. People who support this theory point to the fact that he was staying in the room of the youngest victims, and that the time was close to the time of the original murders as evidence that something made him do it. Others, mostly skeptics and medical professionals, look at the environment. They say, well, you're in a house famous for a brutal massacre. It's pitch black, it's 1 a.m. You've likely primed yourself to be terrified. This is a high-stress environment, and that can trigger underlying mental health episodes or severe panic attacks that result in an irrational behavior. Others have suggested he might have been acting out a stabbing motion, and that the wound was an accident, but the severity of the wound makes people doubt that it was just an oops. The incident changed the house. It went from a spooky fun tourist trap to a place that had actual fresh blood on the floor. And it also served as a massive wake-up call for the paranormal community. Hunting ghosts isn't just about EVPs and cold spots. Real-world emergencies can and do happen in the dark. If you grew up in the Northeast, you know the name Dudleytown. It's the ultimate campfire story. A colonial village in the deep woods of Connecticut that was so cursed, the residents went insane or vanished into thin air. Legends say the birds don't sing there. They say if you take a rock from the ruins, you'll be cursed forever. It's been called a portal to hell. The story goes that the founders were the Dudley family, and that they were cursed back in England when their ancestor, Edmund Dudley, was beheaded by King Henry VIII for treason in 1510. The curse supposedly followed the bloodline across the Atlantic to this tiny settlement in Cornwall, Connecticut. Here's the greatest hits of the Dudleytown curse. The Carter family moved away to New York and were immediately slaughtered by indigenous warriors. Revolutionary War hero General Heman Swift went insane after his wife was struck by lightning on their front porch. Mary Cheney Greeley allegedly self-unalived in Dudleytown just before her husband lost his presidential election. And a man named John Brophy had his wife die of consumption, his children vanish into the woods, and his house burned down, all in a short span. When you actually pull the death records and the census data, the curse falls apart. Genealogists have proven that there's zero link between the Cornwall Dudleys and the beheaded British nobleman Edmund Dudley. Mary Cheney Greeley never died in Dudleytown. She died of lung disease, probably tuberculosis, in New York City. General Swift's wife was struck by lightning, but the general didn't go mad from demons. He lived to be 81 and suffered from your standard dementia in his final years. So why did everybody leave? The town died a natural death in the 1900s because of economics. It wasn't a good farming town, but it's famous now thanks to Ed and Lorraine Warren. Yes, that Ed and Lorraine Warren, the Conjuring couple. In the 1970s, the Warren visited the site for a Halloween TV special and declared it demonically possessed. They claimed the lack of bird noises was proof of demonic presence. The Warren stamp of approval turned a quiet property into a magnet for vandals, Satanists, and bored teenagers. But here's the thing about Dudleytown. It's not a state park. It's not a public ruin. It's a private property owned by the Dark Entry Forest Association, which is a group of very wealthy, private landowners who are very litigious. For decades, they've dealt with vandalism, fires, and people wandering through their backyards at 3 a.m. looking for ghosts. By 2012, the Connecticut State Police and the residents had enough. They launched a crackdown that the media dubbed Operation Ghostbusters. The operation culminated in the arrest of a group of adventure seekers who found out that the scariest thing in the woods can sometimes be a high-definition security camera. The police were called to a private residence on Dark Entry Road. The owner wasn't home, but a security system had notified him of intruders. Police arrived and found James Godfrey and Brittany Lombardi on the property. They claimed that they were just looking around. When questioned, Godfrey denied being there previously. In a move straight out of a cop drama, the trooper produced a still image from the homeowner's security camera taken the night before. It clearly showed Godfrey and Lombardi, along with others. When asked why they were breaking into a private home in the middle of the woods, Lombardi gave a classic bored teenager defense. She told police that they had been smoking pot and watching Law & Order SVU when they decided they wanted an adventure. They initially considered breaking into an asylum in New Fairfield, but decided that Dudleytown was safer. But they were wrong. Godfrey and Lombardi were hit with serious charges: burglary in the 3rd degree and criminal trespass in the 2nd degree. The Operation Ghostbusters crackdown made examples of them to send a clear message: Dudleytown is closed. These 2012 arrests killed the vibe for casual ghost hunters. The Dark Entry Forest Association proved that they have zero sense of humor about the paranormal. If you go to Dudleytown today, you won't find the ghost of Mary Dudley. You'll find a cop and something that'll probably show up on your background checks. The curse is real, but it's legal. It's a legal curse. Whether you believe in the paranormal or you're a total skeptic, one thing is for sure: the places that we go to find ghosts are very good at creating ghosts. I love a good ghost story as much as everyone, but no pictures, no spooky video footage, no viral TikTok is worth your life or your freedom. I want to hear from you guys in the comments below. Have you ever gone ghost hunting and had a close call? Did you ever find yourself in a place that you shouldn't have been and something went wrong? Let's talk about it down in the comments. If you like this video, please subscribe to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Please like and share this video. If there's a spooky or disturbing story you would like me to cover, leave a comment about it and tell me about it. Or send me an email. My email address is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. If you'd like to support this channel, you can become a member of the channel. For the $1.99 tier, you can get access to exclusive content, including exclusive videos, as well as access to my videos before they go public. I appreciate you considering this. You also support me by continuing to watch my videos, liking my videos, sharing my videos with other people. And I do appreciate that you watch my videos. And please stay spooky.